All eyes on Alberta today, where they could finally be using a controversial new tool to take on the federal government. The Premier has warned she may invoke the province's Sovereignty Act over Ottawa's clean energy policies. And joining me now to discuss is Tony Grace. Tony, good morning to you. What are political experts saying about the use of the Alberta Sovereignty Act in the province for the very first time?
Well, Marcia, a couple of takes that we're getting. One is that this is just another effort to get the federal government to talk with Alberta more about narrowing down and finding some common ground on those targets that they seem to be so far apart on. This appears to revolve around the federal government's draft clean energy goals and what Danielle Smith had called some of her lines in the sand. For example, the levels of emission caps and the move to get the power grid to net zero emissions by 2035. Danielle Smith has said that that is something that will put Alberta's power companies and power grid at risk. She's hoping for something closer to 2050. So as a tactic to get the federal government to talk to Alberta, continue to talk to them, and also, it's an interesting test, Marcia, because a lot of political experts point out that jurisdiction is something that may end up having to be decided by the courts, not by invoking this act. So Danielle Smith is supposed to be meeting with reporters early this afternoon to share the details about exactly how they're planning to invoke the Sovereignty Act. And we'll find out then what the specifics are. But it looks like a real test in this very frictious conversation that continues, Marcia, between Ottawa and Alberta, or doesn't continue, depending on who you talk to.
Once the Alberta government outlines the details of its plan, where does this showdown head next, Tony?
Well, it could very well head to the courts. That's what some political experts are saying. And they're noting that the Trudeau government has already lost two recent court battles, one at the federal court, I should say, one at the Supreme Court, dealing with provincial and federal jurisdictions. So that's one place it could end up. Or it could end up with the federal government coming back to the table and talking with Alberta more about changing some of its clean energy goals and accommodating them. We did get a statement from Federal Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault's office, Marcia, who said that they want to keep collaborating with Alberta. They were sort of surprised at the level of rhetoric that it got raised to over the weekend, as were some political analysts. Danielle Smith referring to Steven Guilbeault as a maverick, and also expressing that either so that could happen, that they could keep collaborating, or it could end up in the courts. But Guilbeault's office saying, Marcia, that these regulations are going to be designed with flexibility. So we'll have to see where this conversation lands after Danielle Smith and a few of her cabinet members unveil details today of what they plan to do.